All right, so like number 1. Write the augmented matrix for the system of linear equations. All right, and then what's the dimension of the matrix? All right, so it's going to have the little bars on it. What I want to make sure is I line up my x's and y's and z's and equal signs and everything. So when I stack them, it's x above x, y above y. So I have -2, 5, -1, and 17. That's that first equation. All I did was take out the variables. Then I do 4, 9, but there's no z in this equation, so I would put a 0 as a placeholder for z. And then equal sign is 11. Now sometimes you see it with little dots right here. It doesn't matter if you put them or not. That's just kind of the symbol for equal sign. All right? It's not a big deal if you forget it. Just don't let it trip you up when you see it. So there's my matrix. Now, what's the dimension of this matrix? How many rows? Rows are the horizontals, so how many rows? 2. Okay, so it's 2 by how many columns? 2 by 4. All right. So far, so good? Okay. Now it says, number 2, write the system of linear equations represented. So basically, I'm doing the opposite of what I just did. Here I went from equations to the matrix. On this one, I'm going to go from matrix back to the equations. All right? And whatever's on the far right is whatever's on the other side of the equal sign. And then it looks like I need 2 variables, so x and y. All right? So let's do that. So if I write it as linear equations, I'd say 9x plus 2y equals 6. 3x minus 5y equals 4. That's it. Can we deal with that? Anything confusing yet? No. Now, why do we do this? Well, there is a way to solve the system of equations using matrices. All right, and we do it doing these things called row operations, where we add rows together and try to eliminate variables, like we did with elimination. We add rows together, or maybe we need to multiply a row and then add it to get it something to a 0. Okay, so let me see if I can make it better. So let's just label. This is row 1, this is row 2, and this is row 3, right? So to identify the elementary row operation performed to obtain the new row equivalent matrix. They're equivalent. All right, so take it row by row. Did the first row change? No change. Did the second row change?
Yes.
Okay, did the third row change? No. Okay, so we need to focus our attention on just row 2. All right? Now, look at the relationship between where it started and where it ended. What do you notice? Nothing is the same. Everything's divided by? Or -2, right? Everything's divided by -2. Does that make sense? Whatever it is happened to every single number. All right? Whatever the operation is didn't just happen to the 6 and the -10. It has to happen to all 4. Yes, sir? Well, we're saying to get from here to here, they divided this by -2, this by -2, this by -2, and this by -2. Does that make more sense? So what we did, that means it's 1/2 of the original row 2 is now my new row 2. Okay? So what I do is I write, okay, what is the operation that happened and where did it land? Where did it end up? What happened to it? What happened to it? And then where did it end up? So that's when you see that little subscript thing, that's what it's talking about. Does that make a little bit of sense? Okay. Now, before I jump over, in your video, these next ones. So this is asking me to fill in the blanks using elementary row operations to form the new row equivalent matrix. All right, so notice here, row 2 is staying the same. See that? So all we're doing is messing with row 1. And it's telling me right here what to do with row 1. It's saying multiply row 1 by 2 and land it right here. Okay, can we do that? All right, so what's 1/2 times 2? What's -3 times 2?
-6.
What's -1 times 2?
-2.
Okay, we still okay? That's all it's telling us to do. It looks weird, but it's just telling you what math to do with it and where to put it. Now, look at the next step. It's saying we're going to create a new row 2. You notice that, where it lands? So that means my row 1 is going to stay the same. So I'm going to go ahead and write my row 1 the same because it's not changing. Now you ready for some mental math? This is one of those complex ones. Look what's happening. I'm going to take row 1 from over here. I'm going to multiply it by 5. And then I'm going to add it to row 2. And whatever I get is going to land in my new row 2. Just mental math it, okay? So let's do this. Here's what's happening. All right, if I take row 1 and multiply by 5, let's do this part first. That would make it 5, -30, and -10, right? Yeah? Okay, so this is the 5R1. And then it says to add row 2. Well, row 2 was -5, 2, and 4. So what do I get when I add it?
0, -6.
-6. And that's going to land over here. Is that okay?
Yes.
Where it gets complicated is all this in your head happening. So feel free to use the margins and whatever to step it out. Do the steps one by one and just pay attention to where your end result's going to land. Can we handle that? Does that clarify things for you? Okay, great. No one's listening. Good. Awesome.